I call it the someday effect. And so when you're younger, you have lots of some days. Someday we're going to build a house. Someday we're going to grow the business. Someday we're going to do all these things. A weird thing happens when you get to be middle age and you start to realize that you have less some days than you did when you were younger, and time transitions from an ally to an enemy.
Hey, how's it going? It's the HVAC and Plumbing Hustle podcast, and today I've got Dustin and Tiffany from Half Moon Plumbing, and appreciate you guys being on in this historic moment in your business. You're hitting $10 million, and you'd been kind of almost stagnant for a few years, and then 2 or 3 years ago, something big changed. So we're going to talk about that. But give me a little bit of where's your market, a little bit of backstory too.
Okay, so we're in the Tulsa Metro, and I started the company in 2007. Tiff and I actually started together, and so in the early years we just did commercial, and it was just myself, and then I would just hire help as I needed it, and so just running and gunning, and we met some financial goals. We were able to pay off our home within 3 years. And then after that, we kind of sort of started reassessing and realized that there's no reward for excellence in the commercial world. It's a game of speed. And so we wanted to be in a space where we could actually be rewarded, for offering amazing service and plumbing excellence. And so we started to pivot around 2011, 2012, and got into the service market. So that was the kind of the backstory of the transition. And then from there, it was like, slow growth, steady Eddie. I just really thought, like the analogy I always give is I thought of myself like an aspiring musician who gets discovered one day and then is like this overnight, goes viral overnight and is this amazing sensation. And it just didn't happen that way. It turns out you actually have to have intention and strategy if you're going to grow a business.
And Tiffany, this last few years that have been on the super high upward climb, and all the challenges that come with that, what are some things that you feel like were crucial to that liftoff?
Well, definitely marketing. Before we were doing, I don't know, maybe even 3%, if that, of marketing. We never made like a intentional effort on marketing. And so when Dustin set the revenue goal, we knew that if that's really where we wanted to be, we were going to have to make some tough decisions about marketing. And so we kind of jumped off the deep end and did some mass media marketing. We started billboards and radio.
Still a lot of money chasing these transactions. There's still really good outcomes out there for sellers. It's good to have someone like us in your corner because we're not emotional, but guess what? When you're selling your business, it becomes emotional, and so it's really good to have an intermediary, there every step of the way. www.sfpadvisors.com. All the contact information is directly on the website.
And as you guys have kind of started to be, 10 million is kind of, you're a player now in that market. Like this market, there can't be hundreds of companies in the 10 million plus, right? Like how many do you think percentage wise go over 10 million in your market?
Well, I think when it comes to like plumbing only, we're in a league of our own. Like I honestly don't know of any others. Maybe there are, but there certainly aren't many. So most every company that is going to be north of 10 million is going to be HVAC heavy. They're going to be multi-trade. And so I think in that respect, we're probably somewhat in a league of our own.
So we'll talk about the mindset shift too that led to this. Because at a certain point, you're just like, you know what? We're going for it. Because it requires a lot of guts to go for it. Because a lot of people really, they're making a decision in their head to stay small. A lot of people are making that decision, whether they know they're consciously making that decision or not. They don't want the headaches that come with that. So we're going to talk about that mindset shift. But first, a couple of the challenges that you have now versus being at that $3 million mark. Like, what are a couple of the bigger challenges that have shown themselves? New levels, new devils. What are the couple of the major challenges that are different than when you're at that $3 million mark?
Yeah, I think personnel issues. I mean, there's more people now. There's more people to please, and someone always has an issue. And so a lot of early on, a lot of the difficulty we had, we figured out what turnover was for the first time. I mean, no exaggeration, we went about a decade with almost zero turnover. And the turnover that we did have was, what you'd call good turnover. Someone moved or something like that. But, never someone saying, take this job and shove it, or, a tenured employee leaving to start their own company. And so we went through all that. And that's when you find out what you're made of. When we were friends with these people, we would have them in our home. And so when you're small, it's very intimate. And we thought we were unique and we had something that, no one else in the world had. And when we started to grow, obviously you have to get structure, you have to have systems and processes, and people write their own narrative. So the employees, they think we've sold our soul to the devil or something, and all we care about is money now. All we care about is growth. It's no longer, it's corporate.
What I kind of found a little bit, like, for me, and this might sound crazy, I probably shouldn't say this out loud. It helps me a little bit every once in a while to be like, I have to accept a little bit of darkness. And that, I'm not just saying like I am actually like evil, or I still have the golden rule in my heart. Okay, folks, I still feel that way. But people do, when you're successful, throw those accusations around at you, or there is some kind of like, there's a perception. And for some reason, it helps me a little bit to just, I'm not the perfectly good guy. I don't know. Do you guys remember that movie from the 90s, Swingers? Where the guy's like, I don't want you to be the good guy in the PG movie where everyone's just really hoping he's going to make it. He's like, I need you to be the guy in the PG-13 movie where you don't really know where he's coming from. And he's like,
you embrace the villain.
Yeah, you have these, you're asking me, you're a bear, and you're asking me, thank you for humoring me by going out on this limb, by the way. You're a bear, and you've got these fangs, and you've got these claws, and you're asking me, how do I kill the bunny? He's like, and you don't want to, you're batting it around a little bit. How do I kill the bunny with the fangs and the claws? And I think what it says to me, and I'll just wrap up my weird ass thought here, is we all have an ability to be more effective than we realize, to be highly effective, to be wildly effective. And that makes some people uncomfortable. How powerful people can be, how persuasive we can be, and how much more like we really, like, once you have swagger down too on sales, there's nothing wrong with taking the deal, making the deal happen, assuming the sale. And there's a lot of stuff like that where it's like your self-belief holds you back. So to me, it's not really evil, but like more the PG-13, like I am slightly dangerous. It's kind of useful to me sometimes. And maybe that's, you guys, I'm not saying you have to agree with me on this. I'm saying that's useful for me sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a battle over the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all fighting over the dictionary, and we're trying to define virtue. And so everyone has their own definition. And so we've defined virtue as we're providing the best opportunities to our employees. And the ones who take advantage of that are the ones who are going to win. And if we have people on the team and sitting on the bus that don't appreciate that opportunity, then they're going to have to find a different bus. And we think that's the best virtuous thing that we can do for our team. So I wouldn't come to the villain side. I'm pulling the dictionary back from them when you're not going to define what virtue is because it's convenient for you.
Well, the other thing is, and I'll just to wrap this up and not seem like a villain here, people don't realize how expensive everything is. So like some persons, like sometimes a tech or a plumber or whatever can be in a mode where they're like, I want to give this away, but if you give that away for free, that $50 part on a call that's costing us as a company $400 to get out there, on a lead that costs money and all this stuff, it's actually you're kind of messing with us, because we actually had to pay to make this business happen and all this structure. So there is a little bit of like, they may think it's negative, but it's like literally what we have to do to stay afloat and to grow as a company. And sometimes it's not a big deal because it's just a little bit of profit thing. Is like, no, it's on a $400 cost to get out there, the van, the rent, the lead. It's just expensive. So I think that's also one thing. It's hard to fully like explain that to everybody that hasn't run a business before. And if they go out on their own, don't worry, you'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find out soon enough. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
accusations are almost always baseless, and they're
Yeah.
made out of ignorance. And
Yeah.
that's just the reality. So yeah, you have to be confident in what you're doing, and yeah.
But you got people, I mean, you can't get to 10 million without having some really bright spots in your culture. How have you created kind of a layer? I'm guessing creating a layer of leadership that's starting to take root at a company of that size. So like, how are you finding yourself getting those leaders? Are you training from within? Have you recruited? What are you doing to get the right people in place in leadership?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that like the burdens of growth initially, so there were like several things that were catalysts to cause us to go for it and to start scaling. But that was one. I looked up and I'm like, we had some amazing employees here. And the reality was, if I didn't provide them an opportunity, someone else was going to. And so because I knew that they had massive growth potential, I felt burdened to build a company where they would have opportunities to grow into leadership. So yeah, we were blessed in that respect. So most of our leaders, I would say pretty much all of them, except for maybe one field manager, have been, they were here and we just promoted them from within. So, and we like the one thing that we did really well, Tim, over the years. So probably for a decade, every Monday morning, the entire company, which, was 5 people and 7 people and 10 people for a long time, but we would sit across the table every Monday morning and go through the mission statement and core values. So our roots were really, really deep with the core group that we had. And so part of the reason that we were able to scale so quickly is because we had some really deep roots. And I think that was strategic in building the leaders that we have here today.
What is something that you guys feel is a strength in culture besides that? Like anything else that you feel like, because I think that's what a lot of people have struggled to build. And I even say, like, if it's a tiny company, if it's a tiny plumbing business, it's like there'll be people that's like, it's 4 people, and it's like a dad and a son and and I'm like, well, how can you make that cool? Because like, do you guys go out to lunch?
I tell you what we did.
How do you make it more fun, basically?
Yeah, well, fun. I'll answer, but before I answer that, like one of the things that we did early on in terms of recruiting is once we had a technician on the inside, and he had tasted and seen that it was good. When we advertised on Indeed, the ad basically said, like, we have the happiest technicians in the world. Don't take my word for it. Call them yourself. And so I would put the names of my technicians and their cell phone numbers. And so applicants would call and text our existing employees. And so it was just a way to be transparent. And so it gave us massive credibility when we didn't have a huge brand to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, like, on the fun side, several things that we've done that have really stuck. One is we have something we call Heyday. It's kind of like a company picnic. We host it at our house. It's for the employees and their families, and it's just a great day of fun. We've done different things for food over the years, but We either have chili cook-off or we have it catered. We have inflatables for the kids, like just a time for all the families to get together and to bond and really get to know each other that way.
Foam cannon, mechanical bull one year. Like we've did a lot of things with it, but it's family focused.
Yeah. And so that's been a really nice bonding time. And then also like when we started to grow, one of the things that the techs started to say that they missed was these Monday morning meetings, right? Like this really intimate time that we were having once a week. I mean, just as you grow, that's just not sustainable, just because of the amount of people. So we brought back what we call State of the Union. We do it once a month, and it's kind of like a big pep rally. We recognize all the, like, each department gets a chance to recognize their high performers. We give away the spiff money, review money.
Everyone walks up to their own theme music.
Yeah.
So it's
hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So it's really fun. We, of course we have breakfast for them, for the whole team. And so that's been really crucial kind of as we've grown to keep that cohesiveness together.
I love to hear it. It's funny because it's like some of this stuff seems soft when you're small, and it's like as we get people, we got to keep the people, we got to keep them lively, and it's just part of the game for how do we retain more people. You know what I mean? And everyone does it in their own way, but finding these things absolutely crucial. And it's like even for our company, I'm like, I pride myself on average tenure or whatever. And it's like, to me, retaining context. So we have a goal for how, like, as the average of people, what percentage of people has been here 3 years or more? And I'm like slowly pushing that up. And it's like, as much as, like you're saying, like voluntary attrition or whatever that we can get rid of. I'm like, I've got goals around that and we're tracking it. And a lot of it ends up being soft stuff. They're all convening. What is it, 420 right now in Minnesota? They're all convening, like having a drink or something, right? Old me would have been like, get the out of here, please. Like, don't waste that time. Don't waste that time of my business day, and I think because there's a pivot that has to happen in our brains from like, I am a high performer and I need my 5 high performers and we're just going to I've got 50 people. I got to figure out how to keep more people longer. It's a weird transition. And I think it's everybody feels that from that 5 million mark. Like there's a whole shift that has to happen to like, how are we going to keep people around? And people do it in different ways. I'm not saying it all has to be the same way. It's definitely a weird shift. Speaking of shifts, that mindset shift, you said at a certain point, you just had a total transformation of your mindset. Tell me the story of that and what really led to this run up here the last few years.
Yeah. So I have to tell you the season. So I was like 42 years old. And so I call it the someday effect. And so when you're younger, you have lots of somedays. Someday we're going to build a house. Someday we're going to grow the business. Someday we're going to do all these things. A weird thing happens when you get to be middle age and you start to realize that you have less somedays than you did when you were younger, and time transitions from an ally to an enemy. And so I was dealing with that. I'm looking at my 13-year-old daughter going, if we don't build a home now, she's not even going to get to enjoy it. And so we made the decision to build the home, and we made the decision to start scaling the company. The question was like, how do we do that? And so we're driving one day and we're listening to a podcast with Aaron Gaynor, who had grown his plumbing company to 40 million. And I told Tiffany, I said, if I could talk to this dude, he could help us. And so she says, call him. And I go like, come on. I don't have his cell number. And I can't just call Eco and go, hey, can I talk to Aaron? Like, it's not going to happen. We were doing 3 million at the time and you couldn't get a hold of me. but she did challenge me. So we got home, and I went in our workout room, and I started listening to every podcast I could find, trying to find his contact, and to see if there was a way that I could connect with him. And I finally got his email. And so I was like, well, email's trash, right? Like, no one checks their email. So all I have was subject line. So I'm like, can I find something within the podcast that would grab his attention? And so I'm listening, and at the end of one of the podcasts, the host asked him, "Is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll just say what I always say. When they asked JFK, what's it going to take to get a man on the moon? He said, the will to do it." And so that's what I would say to the listeners out there. All you have to have is the will to do it. And I was like, that's it. That's the hook, right? And so I put in the subject line, I have the will, Half Moon Plumbing, wrote a couple sentences. And within 20 minutes, Aaron hit me back and said, "Hey, way to use my words to get my attention. Let's jump on a Zoom call." So we jumped on a Zoom. It went well. He invited us to Ohio to visit his shop. And so that was like a transitional moment in the company. Like we went up there, our minds were blown. But before we went on that trip, at the same time, we were with a coaching agency called Praxis S10, and I was begging them to connect us with a company that was plumbing only and was 10 million. And so finally, one day he gives me the number of a guy named Sammy. Ends up it's Sammy Ayub with Apex Plumbing out of Ohio as well, ironically. And so I get on the phone with Sammy, and he says, "What do you want to know?" And I said, "Well, all I know is that you guys are 10 million and you're plumbing only." And he said, "Well, not exactly." He said, "I started the company 6 months ago, and we just had our first $1 million month." And I said, I don't think I heard you right, because it sounded like you said 6 months ago there was no company, and you started the company from zero, and in 6 months, and last month you just did, in 1 month, $1 million of revenue. And he said, "No, you heard me right." And I said, like, I can remember where I was at on the highway, like when this happened. And I said, "Bro, if I weren't talking to you, I would say that's not possible. So, like, what's up?" And he says, "Well, let me ask you a question. Are you a plumber?" And I go, "Yeah." Like, what else? And he says, "That's your problem." And and the weight of that hit me so hard as I thought about it over and over and over again. And it made me angry at first, because he wasn't a plumber, and he came into my industry, of which I considered myself an expert, and passed me like I was standing still. And he doesn't know the difference between a P-trap and a pipe wrench. But when I finally got over my ego and calmed down, I realized that he obviously possessed a skill set that I didn't have. And if I was going to grow a company, I was going to have intention and strategy, and I was going to have to acquire a business skill set. And what I believed before that time was my biggest asset, which was my plumbing knowledge, had become a liability, because all my confidence was in my knowledge of plumbing. And
Mm,
plumbing knowledge was not going to build a business, and was certainly not going to get us to 10 million. So that's when I backed away from plumbing and said, "I'm done." I hung up my tools. I quit having, like, the guys at our company could not get me to talk about plumbing. Like, I would stick my fingers in my ears, like, I'm not having these conversations. They didn't need me. They needed me to lead the company and to get that business
mm.
acumen so that I could lead them.
Tiffany, what are some of the subsections of business acumen that you saw Dustin acquiring, and maybe some of the ones that, like, what are the skills within business that ended up being the thing? Because 3 to 10 is not nothing. So it's crazy. What, like, you guys are just hitting this landmark of 10, like that immediately puts you in rare air, especially in plumbing only, as you're saying. So what are some of those skill sets? Like, obviously it was significant in this short period of time.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest one was like financial awareness.
Mm.
Yeah, being able to read the P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. I mean, I love him. I'm married to him for almost we're coming up on 25 years in a couple years. So we've
Let's
been together
go.
we've been together a long time. But before all this, I don't know that he even knew how to get into the bank account.
I used to
So
pride myself on that. I no longer pride myself on
Yeah,
that. Not,
yeah,
I was the same way.
yeah,
I never looked ever.
yeah.
yeah.
And so I think that was a huge kind of learning curve, is just being financially aware, where are we at, where are we going? That was a huge skill. We kind of talked about before, the marketing aspect of it. Since we had never intentionally spent money on marketing, we are now having to learn about marketing. Who is our avatar? Who are we marketing to? What is the best way to communicate to them? So I would say marketing was a huge piece of that puzzle. For me, I don't think vision was always, Dustin's always been very good at seeing the bigger picture, not even just in business, but just in life in general. So he already had that as a huge asset. He can always see the big picture. Where are we going? I think it's just also maybe operational. The little pieces, how are we getting there? We see the big vision, but what are these systems? What are we putting in place? What are the little steps to get us where we want to go?
Yeah. So when we visited Ohio, we saw that they actually had divisions. They had a service division, they had an install department, they had a drain department. And so when we were in Ohio, I had the who is now our ops manager and our install manager with me. And at the time, our install manager was our highest revenue generating technician. And I said, okay, we're doing this. We're going to, I don't think we had 6 or 7 techs at the time. I said, we're splitting the techs. We're going to have a service department, which service/sales. We're going to go to an install department. And Sam, you're coming out of the field and you're going to be a manager. You're going to be the install manager. And so that was huge. So the first thing we had to do was figure out how to sell, because we had never sold before. We had just showed up, given a price to fix the problem. And then the other huge lift for us was we built our own university. We had been tinkering with it before, but we got serious about it at that time. And I think the first class, we pulled 2 guys out of the field and put them through an 8-week intensive. And in 8 weeks, we gave them the keys to vans and turned them loose. And it was messy, but it worked. And we learned a little bit. The next class, I think we had a class of 3, and we put those guys out in 10 or 11 weeks. It was supposed to be 12 or 14, but I kept shortening it every time because we had the demand. And so we just kept doing that over and over and over again. And we figured out how to build our own technicians, and we kept reloading. And so even though we were having turnover, at some level, we figured out how to reload, and we were no longer held hostage by the technicians that we had.
That's pretty big. That's crazy. Okay. Huge, right? Because I still think of it too, or somewhat recent actually, that I think it's like panning for gold. And in our case, the last few years, we've had to let go of some people, and I just didn't feel like they're up to the standard. And it is generous to let go of people when their teammates are feeling the brunt of that. But you're panning for gold, and then you find people too. And it's but if you can't pan, if you can't go through some, you got to go through some too. You got to go through some, because it's not always the right fit. It's not always the right person. And it's those first, 5 years ago, I was getting a lot of, I definitely felt like if somebody left, it was like a massive gut punch. And it's almost like no one could leave today that would destroy me. I mean, there's definitely people that I'd be like, fuck.
Right. Yeah.
But
exactly. Yeah.
but if no one could really take us down, we would 2 months later, we'd be fine, kind of thing. So it's a lot of work to create those systems internally to make sure that you can replace people though.
Yeah. The beginning of 23, we hit a goal. I think we broke, what did we break? 500,000 for the first time, something like that. And so it was a huge month. We were all celebrating. At the time, we had 3 selling techs. And Tiff and I went on a date one night, and we're walking into the restaurant. I get a text message from one of these technicians, and he says he's quitting, and gives no explanation. And the next night, I get a call from another technician, and he informs me that he's quitting. Well, these jokers went and started their own company together, but we had 3 selling techs, and we lost 2 of them overnight off the
Sorry.
best month that we ever had. And so, yeah, you
Yeah.
talk about gut punches.
Yeah.
It's devastating. And so, like, yeah, you'll find out when you go through those things what you're made of. But we reloaded. We went on a massive recruiting campaign. We hired 5 people, and we put them through our university, and they got us through that tough time. I think only 2 of those 5 are left, but they're amazing employees. But even the 3 that didn't make it, they still got us by, right? They still served a purpose while they were here.
Well, for your guys' like sign off to folks that are maybe wanting to go through this transformation of mindset that has allowed you guys to take the painful leap up to 10 million, like the work that you have to put in. Obviously, we can only summarize it a little bit in this podcast, but any encouragement to folks who are thinking about making that leap or are trying to make that leap right now?
You have to have the will to do it.
And use that in your subject line to Dustin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I will say this, Laura Kelly posted something the other day that like hit me like right between the eyes, and it's so true. And she was talking about how entrepreneurs, when you're in business, like business is a clear mirror of who you are. And it doesn't hide who you are. It shows all your weaknesses. And so if I just would like to like prepare people, like if this is the journey that you're going on, you have to be willing to look at yourself and work on yourself, because the business is going to reflect who you are. And it's going to show your weaknesses. And so you have to be determined and disciplined that when it shows you those things, that you're going to work on those things personally. And then the business will, show the results of that internally. So
yeah, and I would just say that being good at your craft and treating people right, like with good ethics, is not enough. You can survive, but you will not thrive with that unless you just get lucky, unless you do go viral. And that didn't happen to me. So you're going to have to acquire a skill set that everyone else has that's been there and done that.
By the way, I have pursued the going viral thing, and I've gotten 100 million views in 1 year, and it didn't get me much.
You didn't get rich and famous?
No, I didn't. So I don't recommend everyone pursue that strategy. I'd say locally famous beats viral every single time. And it's the simple things that make us locally famous, and it's a lot easier too, by the way. So that's encouraging, because that brings us more revenue versus people seeking the viral stuff. I think they're very distracted, but that's okay. We all like to get distracted sometimes. That's one of the most fun parts about entrepreneurship, you know?
Yeah. But it's not just going to happen, like, right?
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like, all shucks, like, we just showed up and did the right things and treated people right, and here we are at 10 million. It's not how it works.
it's those things plus intention, plus strategy.
It's not in spite of those things. It's those things plus the business.
See, I'm going to learn from you guys so I can be a better person and get there one day.
Turn in your villain suit.
Yeah. It protects me sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, if maybe I'm not, just protects me. That's all. Well, anyways, I appreciate you guys for being on. Where can people go check you guys out?
Email Dustin at halfmoonplumbing.com or Tiffany at halfmoonplumbing.com.
And we're on Facebook. And if you want to check out the website, we're pretty proud of our website. It's halfmoonplumbing.com.
Looks very good. I was checking it out as we were chatting. Thank you guys for being on, and I'll see you guys next week. And bye.
Many homes suffer from inefficient HVAC systems due to leaky ducts, leading to uneven room temps, lost airflow, and higher energy costs. AeroSeal's innovative sealant technology targets and repairs leaks, improving airflow and efficiency. Increase your customer satisfaction, increase sales, and offer a unique market advantage. Become a leader in HVAC efficiency. AeroSeal.com.
I can't commend Hook Agency enough on just the experience. We're talking about plumbing experience, but the experience we've had overall working with your team members on this project, they really draw out ideas that otherwise I didn't even think of, which is incredible. So thank you guys for being a valued partner of the Family Plumber. I really appreciate that.